Bruce and Gail, welcome to the Get in the Mode podcast.
Hey, thank you, David.
Crowd goes wild.
Excited to have you. Always the same energy. That's kind of what I appreciated in the when I saw you guys at the summit, your talk. I was drawn to that. So I definitely thought you'd be good to have on the podcast. So thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So for the benefit of our audience, let's start with a little bit of intros. Perhaps I'll let Gail go first. Gail, why don't you kick it off for us?
Sure. So my background is started in New York as a singer, dancer, actress. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Music Theater. Thank you very much.
Boom.
Yes, a BFA in the arts and the liberal arts is great in the corporate world. And I think everyone should go out and get an extra degree. Just kidding. So we were there for just about 8 years, and I was able to get my Actors Equity card and did a lot of theater and music theater and originated different kind of parts, and that was super fun. And every time we finished, we were unemployed again and trying to find another job. So we were also supplementing our income and our ramen habit with working on Wall Street. And so we temped for a long time. And then I was offered a job as an HR recruiter in the corporate office for AIG, which is a large insurance company, global insurance company. And I loved it. I love the people side of business and definitely felt like HR was a home for me because there was so much surrounding people in that area. Then we had our first child in New York in our 330 square foot apartment. So fun. And are still married, which is huge. And we moved out to Colorado to be nearer to family so that we could have our child be near their grandparents. And then I had another baby, and this is all part of my life. This is part of the work stuff too. So I got to throw all that in. So I was a mom for quite a bit of time, and then got back into the corporate world by working with a couple of different smaller organizations. I was an executive director for an arts organization. And then I very shortly worked for a CPA firm, not a CPA.
No,
just
she is
play
not.
One on TV.
She doesn't even do that well.
I'm good with numbers, though. I'm good with numbers.
Are you?
I am. The support feels like there's no going on or some yes,
there's a maybe.
We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And then I got an opportunity to work for a tech startup as someone in there developing their entire change management and training and development program for clients for a SaaS tech firm. And I did that for about 4.5 years. Fantastic experience, really great people, learned a lot. And then got to the point where I just felt like we needed to make the leap with ExperienceYes. And Bruce will kind of fill in more of the blanks about how that got started. And once we made that leap, which was right before COVID, fun times had by all, we just didn't look back. We said, we're going to build this business that we know and love. And again, I think Bruce will go into greater detail about what we do. However, that's my background. I'm certified in emotional intelligence as a practitioner who can execute assessments and debriefs at the corporate level with teams and leaders. And Bruce and I founded a performing improv group about
2006.
Yeah. 16 years ago, which you'll find out, of course, improv and the improv mindset is really the foundation of the work that we do. So that's me in a nutshell. Now I'm going to hand things over to this handsome dude.
Are you talking about me?
Awesome.
Yes, you.
Oh, okay. Great. Yeah. So Gail and I met in college, and so our early careers are very similar. Moving to New York together, living in that 330 square foot apartment together, not killing each other together. We're all a big part of that. But at one point, I ended up getting into the IT space, and that's where I landed my career. I ended up working for a Big Five firm for a while. Then ended up running an IT shop for the second largest theater organization in the country, in the Denver Center for the Performing Arts. Then I ended up as a key accounts leader for a data and analytics company that focused on sports and entertainment clients. So NASCAR, NFL, NBA, NHL, all clients that rolled up to me, which was a lot of fun and really interesting.
Sexy.
That's right, man. That's right. All about butts and seats. All about getting customers into the seat. And then leapt into, as Gail said, leapt into ExperienceYes full time in 2019. We actually started the company in 2013. I was getting my MBA at the University of Denver, and there was an entrepreneurship track. Never thought I would be an entrepreneur. I'll be perfectly honest, David. I never thought that would
I didn't
happen.
think he would be one either.
Yeah, thanks.
I mean, if we're going to be really honest.
I've put my CEO on a performance improvement plan for the record. So
I don't think you can do that. Manage up. Yeah,
there's a lot of managing that we go through. But I was like in this entrepreneur.
Gail's got a lot of confidence in you.
Hey. No. Of course I do. I have to. I'm married to him.
That's right. But yeah, so at DU and went through this entrepreneurship track. They kept saying, what do you do well? What do you love to do? Can you start a business doing that? And I kept coming back to, I love improvising. I love the work, the craft of improv. And for me personally, I never liked the fluffy side of communications, being a consultant and kind of, hey, let's do a communications class. This is going to be a lot of fun, which can be very powerful. I'm not trying to knock those.
Yes,
it's just no, I'm not. But in my brain, it just didn't sit as well. So I wanted to find real data that would go behind what happens in the brain when you improvise, and found some research and went, hey, there's really unique things that happen in the brain. And I think we can start a business on this. So let's go do it. And that's how we got rolling.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Bruce, to ask you this question. So Gail's sort of like a natural, and she's got a background. She went to school for all of that, the improv stuff, right? And before we kind of jump into improv and things like that, just kind of like, how much was it when you kind of got into this world? Like, was it a lot of discomfort? Like, like you talked about the fluffy stuff and things like that. Like you seem to be kind of like jiving pretty good in this sort of like, and obviously you guys have been doing this for a while, so you must be successful, and people are loving it. So I'm curious, like, walk us through that experience, like, because I think that's beneficial for people, like, especially like people like me in IT to hear.
Yeah.
Well, you have to level set the playing field first. He does have a Bachelor of Arts in acting.
A BFA. Thank you, Bachelor of
Fine.
All
excuse me. I forgot
Fair
the
enough.
F. I forgot the F word.
Yes, that's right. What's funny though is David, for me, I was a very serious actor. Like I was very committed. There was a lot of process and structure that went into my acting process. And so in 2005, when we took our first class in improv, which we brought up somebody who was from the Second City School to the little town we live in up in Evergreen, Colorado, and we started taking a class together with 8 or 9 of us, I think. It was a small group. I can't tell you the switch that went off in my brain where I suddenly realized that I came alive in that very ambiguous, uncertain situation. And again, I've always been a process-oriented guy. That's why I think IT really spoke to me, that the dichotomy of this is really very stark, because it's now I'm willing to take a leap. I'm willing to take risks. I enjoy putting myself in situations that help me move forward, that are new, that are different. And that was a very different experience for me overall, as compared to my acting world, right? Compared to my acting world.
Yeah, I think I like that word leap, and that being able to take risks. How many in IT are able to do that? It's more about keeping jobs and maintaining status quo. So now let's jump in. You guys have written this book, and I've got a signed copy.
Yay.
Thank you.
Nice job.
It's called the Improv Mindset. Is it on Amazon?
It is.
Yes.
And Audible. We did the audiobook for it. We recorded it as well.
Oh, and it's in Espanol.
Oh yeah, it's also
La
in Spanish.
mentalidad. Oh,
Improv. La mentalidad improv. That's right.
Yes.
That was.
I highly recommend our audience, if you guys, this is a great read, easy
Thank you.
read too. So
Yes,
yeah,
very.
yeah.
We kept the big
So,
words out of it. I'm kidding.
so now let's get into improv. Let's talk about improv mindset. Let's how do we define it? What is it? What would you say it is?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I hope we're aligned in this, considering we wrote a book on it.
Yeah.
When we were thinking about how to teach this concept of embracing uncertainty, right? Finding comfort in ambiguity, and we think about a really high performing team, we think about an improv team. And so one of the things that really bubbled to the surface for us was we operate as an improv team in a very structured play space. And that play space includes 4 kind of main rules or rules of engagement, or kind of a shared language, if you will. And it's really critical to being successful in improv with others. And so that's kind of the core piece of the book. We talk about how sports teams practice and business teams do not. And improv teams practice. They don't know what the content is going to be from the audience. They know what the games are, and they have built respect and trust by using these rules as the structure for that play. And so, Bruce, why don't you share the first rule?
Sure.
Or are you ready to kind of talk about a little bit of that, David, or you want to hold off?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think that was a great definition. Like, for somebody, we've heard improv, like Whose Line Is It Anyway is a great example.
Yeah.
For those that are old enough to know about that show.
Yes.
Right. But if not, you can YouTube it. It's a lot of fun to watch it. But so that's kind of the background from my understanding of it. And you're kind of talking about developing this mindset that you can bring to your organization as a team, and you can actually practice it. That's what you're advocating. And you're saying, like, there are 4 pillars to that. So, if I were to summarize what you just said, Gail, that's kind of what you're talking about. Maybe we should dive into sort of like, how can we develop, by the way, the book does talk about the details of the 4 pillars. I want to know how, maybe touch upon those 4 pillars. How can a team develop this mindset?
Yeah, I love it.
I think the important thing, and again, kind of coming back to the IT nerd that I am and always have been, David, kind of landing in that data and process space, is that when we embarked on researching and identifying what happens with improvisers' brains specifically, there was a really interesting study done by a researcher at the time out of Johns Hopkins named Charles Lim. He's now out of the University of California, San Francisco. And what he did was he took jazz improvisers and he put them in functional MRIs where they can see what happens in the brain, what part of the brain gets more blood flow, what doesn't, and it lights up in the data reports. And what they found was when jazz improvisers improvise versus when they're doing a memorized piece of music, there's a whole series of connections that one part gets tamped down. It's called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, or the DLPFC. That part basically gets, I don't want to say shut down, but it basically lessens in its action, while the rest of this whole default mode network, which is a series of interconnections in a variety of parts of the brain, light up. And those interconnections have to do with communication and connectivity and collaboration, all by suppressing that DLPFC, all by just tamping that down. We made a bold statement when we found that research. We kind of went, well, we're certain that happens with comedic improvisers as well, because when you think about what has to happen when you step out on stage, and when you listen together, when you're reacting together, when you're creating together, you have to let go of failure and you have to embrace the uncertainty that's happening. So we said, hey, happens in the same way. Fast forward to 2018, where we actually worked with Charles, and they looked at our brains specifically, along with other improvisers, but ours as part of the research, to determine that, yes, indeed, that leap was there, that suppression of the DLPFC happens, and then all these other things occur. What we take from that is that this is a mental state that is learned and practiced by changing the way that your brain is reacting to these ambiguous, these uncertain times, these uncertain skills. And that's where this embracing of the rules, or the core language of improv, those 4 pillars as you describe them, really becomes important. That's how we get teams to move forward to something different.
Right. I mean, and I just, as a quick add-on to what Bruce said, you mentioned it earlier, David, it's the word practice. And there's nothing that frustrates me more when people talk about, well, we sent our team to this, 2-day communications boot camp, or we sent our leaders to a leadership 101, blah, blah, blah. That's all great and important. And if you don't cultivate a culture in which people can come back with that information and that experience, and then practice and fail and try again, right, with great encouragement, there really isn't going to be the growth that you see. And so the more that, to Bruce's point, we can engage in experiential activities, improv activities, which we know will have this effect, the more apt we are when things go awry and a little bit crazy to slip into being able to say, we can solve this. Yep, this happened. And how are we going to solve it?
Yeah. The cultivation point is, I love that word. Like it's something that you have to nurture, cultivate. It's almost like growing that plant, right?
Yes.
And if you, I'm curious, I've been in teams where it's not there and it's not nurtured, leadership is lacking in that area. Are there any studies or really anything that you can kind of point out as the effects of not having this type of a culture, right? Is there any examples or even like attributes that you can talk about? Like, hey, if you don't have this, you're going to lose these things,
Well, I can tell you in all certainty, we have not been able to personally execute any studies. However, there is a lot of data out there to support things like, and especially now, post-COVID, pseudo post-COVID, if you aren't taking care of your teams and providing a culture of fun and, providing opportunities for growth, in other words, not just promoting people based on, what you think they're capable of, more about having them grow into that role. If you don't think about your people as people, right, and that's your greatest asset, then you're living in the dark ages, because it's not about money. Quite frankly, all the articles will tell you, well, we're throwing all this money at people. We don't understand why, they don't want to work for us. Well, it's the strong cultures where people feel belonging, right? And there's a sense of diversity and of thought, right? Equity, inclusion, and belonging that matters.
And what we would also probably add on to that is improv is one of the unique tools that you get that you can practice all that and build empathy, increase your emotional intelligence, and increase something called followership. I don't know if you're familiar with followership, David, or if that's something you've had people talk about on your show before.
Not really. I think you should kind of break that down for us. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
We were thrilled when we found some research that came out of the University of Queensland in Australia around this concept of followership. Followership was first coined in the early 90s as a trait for leadership. This concept of when everybody focuses on the one thing that is the leader, as opposed to the group that's there to support them, that are the followers, right? You can't have a leader without followers, and you can't have followers without a leader. Yet we place all of this focus on the leader. So the University of Queensland studied the Royal Marines. They're like essentially like Green Berets of the Royal Navy. And what they found was, through a longitudinal study, they studied them over 3 months, if I remember correctly, They identified characteristics for good leaders as well as followers, and then had the peers rate those people over the course of the whole time. So they were rating each other. They were also rated by their commanders. And what they found was people who were the best leaders were also the best followers. There was a direct correlation within the peer group that identified if you can get behind an idea, if you can support your teammates at all costs, if you can move everything forward and not, I don't know, David, I've been in the corporate cultures where a decision might be made at the senior level, but middle level managers don't support it. And so all they do is just undercut it and undercut it and undercut it. Those are not good followers. We don't practice being followers. In improv, you practice being a leader and a follower, often in the same scene as you're building collaboratively together. If Gail comes out and gives an idea, I have to go with that idea. I can't force it to turn another direction without really halting the progress of the scene. And those are the kind of things that we think are so exciting about this practice of improv.
I feel a little bad because we got away from the 4 pillars. I'm not sure if we need to go back to that or not. Kind of got off.
No,
on
I think we should talk about that. I love kind of what you talked about, the paradox. Almost, it's like you are a leader yet you're a follower. Kind of like, I think it's a great point. Now, Gail, I definitely want to talk about the pillars. We are talking about developing this mindset. Well, what is this mindset all about? What are the pillars? What are the cornerstones of this mindset, right? So, what are they?
Well, I would tell you that I'm sure there are many improvisation and comedic improv artists who would tell you there's lots of different rules in improv. When we were coming up with this concept of what this mindset looks like, we really settled on what we believe are kind of the 4 main areas. And the first is, which a lot of people have heard and maybe don't know completely what it means. The first is yes and. In improv, the acceptance of what's been offered is a huge piece of moving forward, moving a scene forward. And the and piece is what you bring to it. In business, often when we talk about this particular rule or this pillar, we get a lot of pushback from folks saying, well, I can't say yes to everything. And the truth really is you can say yes and not say yes at the same time. So for instance, if you were to say to me, Gail, I really need you to look at this report and I don't want to, I can't, etc. I might say, this sounds really important to you, David, and I'm free at 3 o'clock. Or I might say, I understand you want me to take a peek at it. I think Alice is better suited to put her eyes on the data, right? You still hear yes and no matter what. And, one of these crazy studies that we keep finding to support the work we do is surrounding the word no and how that stops efficiency and shuts down productivity. And so when anybody hears but, or they hear no, it takes them about 66% longer to get back to that efficiency and that productivity than if they hear something that resembles yes and that's just a powerful, powerful thing when you think about it. We say no a lot in our lives.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, so you're saying like start practicing saying yes and.
Yes.
Instead of like no when your response is going to be in the negative or something along this. And the and is after the and is when you add the value part, like what you're bringing to the table.
Right.
Our brains are exceptional at saying no. That DLPFC that I mentioned earlier is a really important part of the brain that doesn't develop in men until sometimes somewhere between the age of 25 and 27, and in women around 23 to 25. It's responsible for saying no. It's the thing that is responsible for long-range planning and
it keeps you safe.
Risk mitigation. It's a very smart part of the brain. It's
Right.
just lousy for collaboration, connection, trust, all of those
Creativity.
other things that we want out of our employees. We want out of the people that we work with and can't get to. So that's why this practice of yes and can help to begin tamping down that DLPFC.
Yeah.
And are there any, I mean, is it kind of one of your improv sessions where you practice, teach teams how to do this, how to, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a kind of, to us, what sets us apart as a business is every single session we lead, whether it's a keynote or a leadership session or building a high-performing team, is experiential. We always have activities to back up what we do, and to engage our, I guess, our work in applying that improv or applying that skill. Because again, back to what we talked about, practice, right? It's one thing to say, oh, this is great, you should all say yes and it's another to put people in role play situations or games and activities where they then have to practice it and feel what it feels like to push back against that.
Yeah, another interesting point as I was reading the book was, the point about emotional intelligence. It was like 5 pages of it. Talk to, maybe for the benefit of the listeners, talk to us about how improv can actually improve your emotional intelligence.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So truly the thing about, at least from the model that I believe in, which is the GENOS model, which came out of Australia and now has a North American component as well. There are 6 core competencies of emotional intelligence, which, by the way, is exploding everywhere. I think people are realizing you can't move the needle on your IQ. You can move the needle on your EQ. And it's self-awareness, it's self-management, it's emotional reasoning, authenticity, positive influence, and social awareness as well. And all of those kind of components, right, core competencies, that's what makes us human, right? And the thing about improv, as Bruce said earlier, improv puts you in situations where you have to increase your awareness because our second pillar is listen to serve. And so one of the things that you absolutely have to do is learn how to be present and listen without an agenda, right? I'm here for you. How can I serve you? And when you come at, speaking in a team like that or behaving in a team like that, you have this natural byproduct of increasing your empathy and increasing your social awareness because you're paying attention. Right. And then things like self-awareness and self-management also come through the ability to engage in these activities where you have a specific time where you need to engage versus where you need to step back and wait. And waiting is tough for some extroverts like myself, and not difficult for introverts. And so there's things like that kind of shift. So it's really those rules, the yes and. I just mentioned our second one, which is listen to serve. And then support your teammates at all costs, which is the third one. And again, if I'm in the mindset of walking into work or working from home and getting on meetings where I am thinking, how can I support my teammates today? What can I do? That is me showing up and using positive influence and using emotional reasoning and being authentic in my place of being a good teammate, right? And I think the final one I want you to talk about.
The final one is just trust your instincts, right? And especially as we're thinking about it from an emotional intelligence space, because we like to come at it from that, is that you often know what's right, and you often need to raise a voice in order to be heard. And if you don't trust that, if you're not there to bring it up, we like to use the study that was done around airline pilots, and specifically around crashes and with airline pilots.
Oh, that's captainitis.
Yeah, captainitis. That's what it's called. Where where we defer to what the captain says. Co-pilots would defer even though mistakes were being made. So many deferrals happened in a row. Typically 7 mistakes would happen. And what ends up happening is a cataclysmic accident. That the co-pilots knew something was wrong and weren't in a position to be able to trust that instinct and for behavior to stop and for an accident to be avoided. It's that kind of stuff where, when you're practicing it in the role plays and the games that we like to set up, is you get that experience of it's there. You need to step out on a limb. You need to not be afraid of failure, because failure will will keep you from choosing to do something. Fear of failure will keep you from choosing to do something.
Yeah.
And the more you can practice not choosing to the more you can practice stepping out rather than holding back, the better.
Yeah, exactly.
Took my brain a little while to get that out.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Late in the day.
Let's talk about the listen to serve for a bit, right? I think listening is a skill every leader wants to develop. What exactly do you guys mean by listen to serve? With the improv mindset.
So when it comes to engaging in improv activities, if you're not paying attention when a scene starts or an activity starts, then you're going to miss the opportunity to have their backs, right? And you're going to be thinking of something else. You're going to let your mind wander, or maybe you're just stuck on what you want to happen, right? And this happens in conversations all the time, where, and I don't know if you're married or if you know married people, oftentimes, or even just if you have partners in your life, when you're having conversations, we have these isms that we fall back on, right? We think we need to solve the problem for them, or we think the first thing out of their mouth is the thing they want to talk about. And sometimes it's not, and oftentimes it's not actually. And so a lot of times, we need to be able to step back, open ourselves up and say, why are they talking to me right now? Why is this important? And if I create, again, the space, cultivate some space here, what is really going to happen with this conversation? And, one of our games that we play is called the 5-second rule, and it puts people in a position where they cannot speak for 5 full seconds, which doesn't sound like long, and it's an eternity until after that person has spoken. And when you're in a real conversation, if you give that much space to somebody, often they will add more. So like, for instance, in sales, or, with your working with your clients, suddenly you're really getting to the root of what's going on, because you have allowed them to get it out, right?
Yeah, people hate a void, and they will fill it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you give them the space to fill that
Great
void,
point.
you will
Yes.
likely hear a lot more information than you expected.
Yeah.
And as a married couple, she's right. We have to be careful with this. We're all go into solutioning as soon as she presents a problem, as opposed to, hey, we still practice these skills too.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely 100%.
We're not perfect.
Sometimes my best form of action is to simply sit and wait and let the information come.
A couple of things. One is that 5-second rule. I think that's a great exercise for anybody to do. Easy to do, right? I mean, you can do that with your partner, even with if you want to playfully do it with your coworkers, feel free to do that. Just say, hey, I'm not going to respond for 5 seconds. That doesn't mean I'm not listening to you or anything like that. But so I think that's a great exercise. Thanks, Gail. Now, another thing that you're talking about is, Bruce, you were talking about how we kind of jump into solution, and it's sort of like the IT digital brain that we have. It's, we hear certain words and we get triggered for the solution, right? And we don't listen to the full sentence or paragraph or whatever that is, the problem statement is. Instead, we're just focused on, we hear a couple of words and we know the answer. So yeah, I mean, I think that listen to serve is spot on. Like, certainly, a 5-second rule is good to practice.
Our brains are wired for shortcuts. It really wants shortcuts. So if it can categorize, oh, David is speaking about a UI problem with this button, and I can go immediately to a solution, my brain desperately wants to go to that because it's a shortcut to get there. It's very lazy. My brain is lazy.
Right.
All our brains are lazy.
and this practice of listening to serve, this practice even of the 5-second rule is an important one because it takes, just like everything else, practice. It takes practice for you to break that habit of the shortcut to get to that answer.
We actually have an activity, a couple of activities that we put our teams through, or when we do these sessions. One of them is where we ask that they not touch all of these kind of different pieces of things they're going to make something out of. We put it all on the table and they just have to talk about it for 4 minutes, what they see. And it is excruciating for a lot of very technical people because they just want to get in there and start fixing and start doing and start making what we've asked them to do, as opposed to aligning themselves with what they see, how it's going to behave. Do we agree that that's a bouncy ball or whatever it is?
What roles might be?
Yeah.
Who the best is to serve the situation?
Exactly. We just want to start fixing it. And that just is scary because oftentimes then you're going in without really knowing what all the components are.
Talk to us about how your company engages. Is it more like workshops? What's what sort of practices do you guys bring on these?
It runs the gamut for us. So we're very client focused, which I think everybody probably says they're very client focused. I don't know who says they aren't, right?
I am not client focused.
Yes,
Can we do business together?
That would be something.
Just be honest.
That would be a really interesting sales process. Look, I don't care about you.
I don't care about you. I care about my commission.
Yeah,
so if we could just cut to the chase and you could sign here, that would be awesome.
That'd be great. That'd be great. We do a variety of things. We'll do keynotes. We'll do which David, you were a part of when we were out at Conscious Entrepreneur Summit. We'll do multi-day, single-day sessions. We'll do innovation sessions. We'll do emotional intelligence programs. I'm certified in design thinking, so we do design thinking as a part of that. All of the things we do, though, is steeped in this language and this process of improv to change your brain. To then change your business, right? It's all a part of that whole thing.
Well, and I think to Bruce's point, to the customer focused or the client focused piece that I also am really passionate about, back to my, I love people, is that, to help us really understand what we're being brought in for, we need to understand the company. So we take time to get to know what our businesses do, right? What's their product? What's their value? Who are their people? What's the language that they use with one another? Do they call each other teams, or do they call each other pods, or do they call each other business units? What is it? And that gives us more credibility and helps us build partnerships, as opposed to just, sure, we're going to come in and be fun, right? That was a bit of a push when we first started. People thought, oh, it's improv. They're just going to come in and it's fun. And we are fun. And also there's data to back up all the stuff that we do. Right. And so we want people to know that too,
So Gail, what you're saying is understanding the culture, the existing structure of the company and the teams helps you tailor the workshops and the programs. I'm curious, what's the experience been on these programs and workshops with introverts? Like how, I'm certainly extroverted. I'm curious what's the effect, and what's been your experience? I'll just open that up.
I'll take this one, since I'm an introvert. Actually, I'm an extroverted introvert. So I, just to define that, I get my energy by being alone, as opposed to my wife, who gets her energy from being with people.
It makes it tough to be together, actually.
Yeah, it's awkward. It makes it awkward.
I'm a drain on his energy every day.
What we like to bring up examples when we talk about that is, like oil and gas companies. We worked with a group of oil and gas engineers. right? And they were interested in solving their well platforms, basically where they dig a hole and they bring up material out of the ground and they store it. That's what they wanted to kind of innovate around. The problem is the challenge is they're engineers, right? So they're used to a very formal process for how they think about things and why they do it.
What's been proven.
That's right. What's been proven. So our job was to get them into the mindset of basically the improv mindset, and then work with them to develop a new product. And what we have found over time are the people who are the most introverted, the people that are most scared of hearing the word improv, are the most likely to respond and grow during our workshops. Yep. They have this, we find that just about everybody grows during our workshops, but it's those ones that have that hardwired DLPFC, right? That are the engineering types, the accountants. We did a group of psychiatrists. Like they wanted, we were going to talk to them about the brain, and they were like, no, you're not. We know about the brain. We're psychiatrists. Like it's just really funny. And the end result is like the end result of the oil and gas company is by taking them through those programs, having them practice this language and then building their product on top of it. They did something like they saved $40 million with a new design of a well pad, but like a brand new, totally different design that arguably they would have been challenged to get there as quickly if we weren't involved to help them get there.
Yeah, it's actually our favorite thing. We talk about that. If we walk into the room and we see someone crossing their arms or avoiding eye contact, chances are they're going to have the greatest growth and the best time. And we love that. We love that.
We sometimes will walk into a room and we'll reset the room so that there are no tables.
Oops.
And make people just sit in chairs, and their heads explode when they walk in.
It's so uncomfortable.
This is very different. I don't know what to do.
Where am I supposed to put my coffee?
That's right. My pencil is supposed to go right next to my pad. What is going on? Like those are the kinds of things that even the little things get people into that new brain space.
Yeah, no, I remember in the summit, you guys were the only speakers where there were probably like, I want to say 20 people on stage, because you brought up this improv thing that like all other speakers had one or two or with a slideshow and things like that. There was no, I didn't think there was a slideshow for your talk even, but it was like so crazy.
Yeah,
so,
we like to have a party on stage.
That's right. Trust me, one of the things we talk about trusting your instincts, if we're not having fun, we know that nobody else is having fun. So
Right.
we landed in hey, let's make sure we have a good time, and then everything else is going to be okay.
And I honestly think even among the 20, there might have been introverted folks, right? Yeah. And we all played along fine. It wasn't awkward or anything. And we were all on stage, without fear, without stage fright. So that was pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
What you guys did there. We're going to jump into our rapid fire questions. So 3 questions.
Ooh,
Since you're a couple, there might be some questions that, I may have to ask individually, and don't steal each other's answers.
I like this. I feel like we're in a game show.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Oh, man.
I'm leaning in.
Is this going to start a fight between us?
No.
Okay.
I hope not. You guys are going to have a wonderful dinner tonight. So,
Yes, I hear you're nervous about
what's
that,
a
but it's
movie?
gonna be
What's
okay.
a movie that you as a couple keep watching again and again? I'm sure this is a couples thing. It's common.
I'm going to throw this out there. Anything with the Lord of the Rings. We love Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that true, Bruce?
Yeah. We go back and we'll watch. It's all right. Full disclosure.
I'm a nerd.
I don't know
too.
why it's a Christmas movie, but for some reason the kids are home. We'll watch all 3 movies back to back to back.
The extended 4-hour versions.
Yeah, we'll watch them all. Every one of them. We know what's going to happen.
All right.
The ring goes into Mount Doom.
Yes.
That's what happens. Yet we still are riveted.
My precious. Yes.
Good deal. So now the next question is more for each one of you. So don't repeat the same answer.
Okay.
You guys have been married for how long?
27 years.
Okay.
27 years. I have to say the same
20
answer because this is data.
No,
David.
no,
This is
that's
data.
not the question.
Okay,
The
good.
question is
Phew.
following up. The question is, maybe I'll let Gail go first. What do you think is the secret to the success? Or, kind of kept you guys together? I don't want to say success, because that seems like, everything is perfect.
We're going to say this answer at the same time because I know that we both will have the same answer for you. Okay. And that's why it has to be this way. And we'll do it at the count of 3. So you count us off.
3, 2, 1, go.
Humor. I mean,
like that.
it's laughter.
Yeah.
It's laughter. We fight, we disagree, we move outside of our swim lanes and do all of that stuff. And what inevitably brings us back is humor, poking fun at each other, ourselves.
Well, and I happen to be very, blessed in the fact that I'm married to a very, very funny woman, and
nice.
It's just it makes it fun. It's funny, David. This question was asked of us. We were on
we were on
the panhandle of Florida. We were on vacation. We were there with my sister and her husband, who had been married maybe a couple years more than we had. There was a newlywed on the beach. She called us over, and it was a bride to be. Sorry, it was a bride to be, and she called us over with her party, her group of women who were with her, and she said, "What's the secret?" And just the women answered, because the men, Aaron and I were up and we were getting a drink for the women, and they answered. Gail and my sister both answered the exact same thing, different words, and then we came back down and we were asked the same question. And we both answered the same thing that was in line with our spouses. My sister and my brother-in-law, respect. Gail and I was humor. And I think somewhere in between those two words are probably the best things for any marriage.
Yeah, no, I think kind of have to be able to laugh at yourself and take lightly about, the things, our life is short here. So,
oh, no kidding.
Yeah. If you're not laughing, it's not worth it.
Right.
Last question. Favorite? It's summer. Favorite thing to do you guys are Coloradans. What's the favorite thing to do in Colorado for summer?
Oof, gosh.
So
you go.
Yeah.
You should start.
I'll start just because it's right there at the tip. My daughter and I started a couple of years ago hiking 14ers, which are mountains that are above 14,000 feet. There are, I think, 52 of them in Colorado.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can do one each week for the whole year.
Yeah, no, that'd be rough. We've done 12. We're planning on another one in another couple of weeks. And we just love doing it together. And so now that she's off to college, I want to wrap as much time as I can, with her before she leaves back for college again. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say hiking is a huge part of our world. We have a fantastic neighborhood of friends, and we'll just be spontaneous because we live in Evergreen. We're surrounded by open space. Just behind our house is a beautiful hike up to the top of this mountain where you can kind of have almost a 360 view, and it doesn't take long to get up there, about 35 minutes, 40 minutes tops. And it's, you have to work to get there, and we'll just be spontaneous and say, hey, let's go. So summertime is definitely about being outdoors as much as we can on the deck, having coffee or hiking or whatever.
Awesome. Well, here's a bonus for the ones who stayed till the end of this podcast. As we were kind of getting into this podcast, we were talking about hobbies, right? And how that can actually benefit your leadership, what value it brings and things like that, mastering a hobby, so to speak. What are your thoughts on that? Like, you kind of resonated and with what I had to share on that. So I'm curious, what do you guys have to say about that?
I'll let you go first.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think everyone kind of has a different approach when it comes to mastering something, right? Some people, it's about making a schedule and having a journal and, maybe an accountability partner, all of those things. No matter what it is, I just think whether it's knitting or cooking or, doing improv or collecting buttons, I don't know what it is. There's just so many translatable skills that you have when you are connected and committed to something outside of your job that you can bring into your job, right? And I know, like for me, for instance, one of the things I love to do is sing. Like singing is my superpower. And when I don't do it, it definitely affects the way I show up in other parts of my life because it is such an outlet for me. And so if I was going to just off the cuff say one of the greatest benefits, I think, of having something that's a little bit more than a hobby and something that you're mastering is this idea that, it makes you better all the way around because of that discipline that you hold outside of your work and your business. What would you say?
I would echo all that. I think one of the things I can do is just say that another passion of mine is golf. I love to play golf.
And when we say passion, friends, we mean passion.
I
he would play in 32 degrees, snowing, sleeting.
I've done that.
Doesn't matter.
I have done that. I love to play. And it's one of those things that I didn't realize.
Would you play by yourself, like a 9-hole or?
All the time.
Yeah. All right.
18
So
holes, he'll walk on
definitely something then. That says something about you.
And if I spin that to leadership principles, right? Kind of landing it into that language. If your passion is contagious, people get behind passion really easily. In order to master something like a hobby, you have to try it and fail at it a whole bunch. And then you get better. And you have to pray. It's funny if you look at it in just the basis of improv, you have to practice. You have to continue to see progress forward. You have to understand the rules of whatever you're doing or the game that you're playing so that you can work within those to also understand how you can be creative within those rules and what they mean. You want to celebrate success. There's nothing better than hitting a fantastic shot.
Bruce is still waiting for that, you guys.
Hole in one.
Just kidding.
Yeah, one of these days.
Just kidding.
And then you don't want to beat yourself up when you have a bad shot. All of these I could put in line with this is what good leadership looks like.
I love that.
Yeah. I resonate with what Gail said earlier about, the discipline of it, right? If obviously it took you some time to master singing. It's not like, I started singing and then I'm this great singer. And so that's one angle. And Bruce, to your point about, failing and allowing yourself, and you still enjoy it, just because you may be bad at it just doesn't mean you stop it, right? So I think the process is also bringing some enjoyment, and I think that translates perhaps even to kind of seeing failure, allowing failure, and not seeing that as the ultimate outcome, but also enjoying that process together as a team. And you kind of foster that environment as a leader.
Absolutely. Love it. Yay.
That's awesome. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope to have you guys again very soon. Bruce and Gail, thank you so much for being on the Get in the Mode podcast.
Our pleasure. Thank you, David.
Now go get in the mode.